It is the Beaver Banter podcast. CJ Baumgartner with Ian Rivers going live on a Saturday special. You can see it in the title. You can see it in the little lower third graphic we have on the screen. A special weekend edition of the Beaver Banter podcast, taking some time out of opening morning of the rifle season to come on out here and talk a little Beaver sports because a lot is happening. A lot is happening. We got a ton to react to with football just getting a big win to keep the Axe. Men's basketball gets their season going. We're going to talk about a couple of those things in this episode. We're not going to do our normal Beaver Banter episode, but there are just a couple things that we wanted to make sure we could get to and kind of get in front of. So that way, by the time we meet for our normal weekly episode, that we kind of can address and talk about some of that stuff. And also, this is just the time of the year where so much is happening, Ian, that, you know what, if we have a chance to maybe knock a little bit off the plate before we get into our usually scheduled program, that it could just give us more time to kind of go in depth on some other things. So, Ian, here we go. Another great day to be a Beaver, a good Saturday across Beaver territory. Bemidji State gets the win in football. Men's basketball gets going. But Friday, women's soccer able to punch their ticket into the NSIC Tourney. Let's start with that. Ian, what happened?
Well, it was Thursday evening, but either way,
yep. Days
ago.
Whatever. Yeah, it's a lot going on.
So, yeah, Thursday, the Beavers punched their ticket to the NSIC tournament for the, umpteenth year in a row at this point. They've been a mainstay in that tournament for a long time, and I don't know if they were necessarily like at huge risk of missing out on the tournament, but they got it done. They went into Duluth and got a 3-0 victory on Thursday, and that secured their spot. And they needed it partially because Wayne State beat Winona State to jump them momentarily in the standings. Northern State, however, did lose 3-0 to UMary, so Beavers probably would have been safe as it was, but now you get the 7 seed instead of potentially dropping to the 8 seed and having to play Minnesota State Mankato in the first game. So now they have a matchup against Concordia St. Paul, a team they just played, less than a week ago at this point and lost 2-1, unfortunately, on home turf. And now you'll be going to St. Paul to play that game. But that game is on Monday at 11 a.m., and we wanted to get to it early because we don't normally record until after that game is already over. So we wanted to give just a little bit of a preview on how that went. Like I said, Beavers finished 7th in the regular season standings. But in years past, this team has just been built to play tournament soccer. It's just something that they get up for those tournament games. They made a deep run last year, won the NSIC tournament for, I think, the second year in a row. So they're going to go into St. Paul. They're going to be hungry, and they're going to try to win it for 3 years running. And I don't know. I don't think they have a 0% chance to win. Obviously, it's an uphill battle against one of the best teams in the conference this year, but I think that they could go in and pull an upset.
Yeah, we talked about it last week. Just need a chair and a chance for this team. They just need to get into the tournament, and they've shown before that even in years where they haven't been as strong in the regular season, just getting into that tournament, they are built to play low scoring, grinded out defensive games, and that's what it is. You're playing the longer you play in these tournaments, the better the teams get, the worse the weather gets typically, and you're just meant to play this kind of, hey, come down to us, play this gritty style defensive play, and we'll be opportunistic on offense when those opportunities happen. Yeah, I think Bemidji State, they lost 2-1 in that matchup against Concordia St. Paul the last time they went around, but there's no reason that this team can't come out with another one, especially when you look at for the fact that, you mentioned Bemidji State getting into the NSIC tournament for the 15th straight season, going all the way back to, bad at math here. What is that, like 2009? Like, that's just how this program has been rolling. And the fact that they always seem to get in at the very least is just a good sign for this team. And especially the way they did it against UMD. Now, I know that they're going through it right now for the Bulldogs. And as much as I do not hate to see it, but they still took care of business, and this team put up 3 goals. Bartheld had a 5-point night in that game and just taken over. And when you're going to have one of your better players doing that and getting hot right before a postseason run, huge.
Yeah, absolutely. If you look a little bit at the standings, it's hard to get a real judge on how many goals teams will score in a game. It's such a naturally low-scoring sport that the stat can sometimes just be a little skewed anyways. But Concordia St. Paul averages 1.94 goals per game, averaging their opponents get 0.56 points per game. The Beavers a little bit below that at 1.5 goals a game and 0.89 goals a game allowed. So this should be a decent enough match. I think if the Beavers can get out to an early lead in this game, find a goal, whether it be on a set piece or from the run of play, if they can get out to an early first half lead, that's kind of how they want to play. They model it, a little bit after the Beaver hockey team and Tom Serratori over there. It's really hard to come back on a team that plays this well defensively, and that's what Jim Stone has built this team kind of around over the last few years. If you want to take a quick look at the bracket and who plays who, Bemidji State has the first game of the day in Concordia or in St. Paul against Concordia. Wayne State travels to Mankato. That's the 1-8 matchup. UMarion St. Cloud State in St. Cloud. That's the 4-5 matchup. And the 3-6 matchup is Augustana and Minot State of the other Beavers down there in Minot taking on Augustana. So, yeah, it should be a good tournament. Hopefully the Beavers are around for the second leg of it. There will be a 0% chance that they can host the second round and championship rounds. So that's unfortunate, but hey, they went into St. Cloud last year and won. They went to Mankato 2 years ago and won. I believe it was in Mankato. So
yeah, they did.
They can go on the road and they can be just as successful as they are at home. And hopefully good luck to them. And hopefully next time we're talking about Beaver soccer, it is with a semifinal preview.
Right. And Ian, remember, people can follow along on the NSIC app to follow along with that women's NSIC tournament women's soccer coverage. Still free from what I remember to watch on the NSIC app. And like you said, 11 o'clock is when that match time will begin on Monday from St. Paul. Roll Beavs, though. Put this out on Twitter the moment that they clinch their spot. I mean, just don't count this team out this time of year. They just find ways to win. And sometimes it's in dramatic fashion like they did last year. Sometimes it's just straight up beating the other team. But they'll be a team to watch. And I'm sure if you're Concordia St. Paul, you are not excited of the fact that you drew this Bemidji State Beaver soccer team. So good luck, ladies, and we'll see how that thing ends up coming out here. Before we get to football, Ian, why don't we talk a little bit about men's basketball just to kind of knock it out? They played over the weekend. They've gotten a couple games under their belt. It's always tough to gauge with stuff like that just because we don't really have an opportunity to watch them because they're playing usually in tournaments and the live streams for that can always be a little murky. So a little bit of box score hunting, but a good start to the season, I think, in the first couple games for Bemidji State University.
Yeah, I'm not overly disappointed with how it started. They got a win today, and yesterday they played against Central Missouri, and they dropped a close one, 74-68. But all around, I'm not going to be too critical of how they played in this game. Like you said, we didn't get a chance to watch it, but just based off what I'm seeing, box score watching and from the vibes that I get from the Twitter sphere and that sort of thing, these games didn't go poorly. You look at the Friday loss and the shooting was pretty good. I mean, shot just under 50% from the field. So maybe not quite what you want to see, but 3-point percentage was 45 and the free throw percentage was 70, which is very doable. You actually outshot them in almost every category of the game. The 3-point defense was 50%. They went 12 of 24. That's Central Missouri. And I am not seeing John Sutherland in these box scores. Maybe that has something else. Maybe there's something, that I don't know about, but I thought he was coming back this year. Or am I just...
Well, it could be. I mean, good question with some of that. It's tough to tell with college sports, especially because unless you're there on the ground, like you just sometimes don't know. But right, we've kind of had this conversation last year at the end of the season. I mean, he's on the roster, so I guess the only thing would be, potential. Just is he hurt? Is he not quite healthy to begin the season?
It could be,
and
you never know
the extent of that. We'll kind of just play it by ear and see what happens with this team. Yeah, because that's obviously just a big question mark going forward. Maybe there's an answer somewhere that we missed, but yeah, that would be huge for this team if he's there. And if he's not there, that's also, again, going to impact how this team goes forward, considering he's been their best player since basically being on the team, at the very least one of the best players. Looking at their first couple games, especially looking at the second game in that win over University of Arkansas Monticello, a couple new guys into the mix. There's always a couple for Bemidji State University. Even before the transfer portal, Coach Mike Boschee always loves to get, he likes to recruit in the community college sphere. He likes to bring in veteran players that can come in and fill that immediate gap. Even before the transfer portal, they'd always, it feels like, have a new point guard every year, or maybe not point guard specifically, but it always felt like there was an experienced player coming in, whether it was point guard or on the wings or whatever, who could come in and help this team out and give them an immediate pick-me-up. And for this year, looking at this team, Malang Athan, who came from Cloud County Community College, Maryland Eastern Shore, and his hometown is in Australia, of all places. Cloud County Community College is in Concordia, Kansas for his last stop. He was one of the leading scorers for the Beavers in that win over University of Arkansas Monticello. Funny story with Monticello. There was to why I just mispronounced it and been trying to avoid mispronouncing it. When I worked at the TV station in Duluth, there was a assistant sports director who was not from the area. He's from like the South. And somebody asked how to say Monticello. And a guy who was not from Minnesota and never heard of Monticello said, "Oh, it's Monticello," and went on the air and said that. So I always have that inside joke with myself.
Well, there is some sort of historical significance. I don't know what it is, but I know that Monticello is like a pronunciation of something. Don't quote me on what it is, but I've heard it before. But yeah, Monticello, right close to my neck of the woods. I was just there the other day down here in central Minnesota.
So, Malang Athan or Athan Malang Athan, excuse me, had 19 points, 3 3-pointers, played
double
8 minutes, snacking some of that up there. Yeah, double in the game. Tate Olson, the second leading scorer with 12 points in the game. This is
11 rebounds for him as well.
Yeah, and that'll be interesting to see. Tate Olson's a guy who is now kind of entering that junior season, kind of had a couple seasons where he's got some early playing time, now is experienced, kind of see how that development process kicks in for him. This is going to be interesting because it's more just who is going to be the one picking up kind of the bell for this team and kind of running with some stuff. Like we talked about, if there's no Sutherland and if some things do kind of change from a season ago. Some other names, Christian Kuntz and Jaron Mayo, a couple other names for the Beavers kind of making their way on the stat sheet there. Bemidji State 1-1 to begin the campaign, and now we move on in the schedule. They have some of their easy wins coming up, the schedule wins, if you will, playing an NAIA team in Valley City on Wednesday, and next Tuesday, the 19th, playing Minnesota Morris. So those games should just be wins. You should have no business handling those teams, and if you do, that's going to be trouble. So Bemidji State 1-1 to start the year. Good vibes rolling. We'll kind of see what happens.
I have 2 more points really quick about basketball just before we move on. Tate Olson in the Friday loss did add 20 points and 8 rebounds in that game as well. So he is start. And then I wanted to make a point here about the team that they just beat today, University of Arkansas Monticello. I saw on Twitter that the BSU men's basketball Twitter page was putting out these graphics about smashing boll weevils. And I'm like, what on earth are they talking about? The University of Arkansas Monticello, their mascot, now they have a mascot, which is Wheezy the Weevil, representing the boll weevil, a beetle that destroyed the cotton farms in the southern United States in the early 1900s, which I think is awesome that their mascot is the boll weevils. That's what their mascot is, and their school name, I guess, on the men's side at least. And then on the women's side, their women's teams are referred to as the Cotton Blossoms. So I always think it's unique when teams have like a historical significance behind their name. Beavers is fun, and I'm sure there's plenty of Beavers around Beltrami County. But
Well,
when you got
the
something
reason
like stupid like your Dragons or something like, it's
the name Beavers for Bemidji State does have some significance, but not quite in the way people think. I believe the story goes like when one of the very first seasons of Bemidji State football, the university president like was walking down watching practice and said they're out there with like the veracity of the mighty beaver hitting his tail on the water. And they're just like, I guess we're the Beavers now. That's how Bemidji State got its name. But yeah, I love it when teams can dip back and have some kind of cool meaning for their school. And yeah, Bull Weevils is really cool. I love it when there's some kind of play on it, like for Bemidji High School, the Lumberjacks and the Lumberjills. Perfect. Love it.
Yeah.
Breckenridge High School over in Western Minnesota, right by Wapaton. They're the Cowboys and Cowgirls, obviously. Just kind of flipping that. I like it when you can kind of get a little more specificity, if I pronounce that word right. Like you can just kind of hone in on that. I'll always love when I lived up in Duluth in that area. In Ashland, Wisconsin, they're the Ashland Ore Dockers because they're right on Lake Superior.
Yep.
Perfect. Two Harbors Agates, Proctor Rails, Duluth Marshall Hilltoppers. Like there's just some schools in that area that have just really leaned into good mascot names. And I will always appreciate the Eskimos, like 10 out of 10, no notes. Appreciate it. It's not Eskimos. They spell it Eskimos. Like there's an O, like they just Eskimos. Yeah. Perfect. So, anyway, wrapping, the interesting thing with Tate Olson, by the way, too, I've seen him play in high school. I called his high school games his senior year. That dude is tall. That dude is a guy that's physical. That is a guy who made his bones in high school, slashing to the lane and playing his game that way because he was just better than almost everybody on the court up until like his final high school game when they played BBE, who is just always a perennial Class A basketball powerhouse.
BBE was in Maple Lakes Conference for a long time. I'm not sure if they still are, but I remember like Maple Lake is 2A and they play 1A. And so it's like, man, we should really be beating these teams, but they just would every time just kick our ass, man. And then finally, I think the first time I think we beat them on the varsity level was my senior year. And it was just cool just because, yeah, they've been a perennial powerhouse at the basketball school for a long time.
Right. And so that's who they lost to in the section championship game in 6A, his senior year. And he, by the way, scored a ton. They let him get his and they just, made sure nobody else could stop them. And he was a slasher. He's a guy that he had an outside shot. He could shoot the outside shot. That just wasn't his game. He was going to take you to the rim. He's going to get to the free throw line. He was going to make his points that way offensively. Here, he had a few threes on the most recent game earlier on Saturday. He had 5 threes in the loss to Central Missouri. He's a guy who can shoot that three on the outside game. He has that, but he hasn't had an opportunity to really develop that and use it as a full-fledged part of his arsenal. It just kind of was something he had in the back pocket. If he can get that outside shooting and figure out a way to, obviously translating it from high school to D2 level is a much different story, but the fact that he has that ability to slash and can make shots beyond the arc could be huge for Bemidji State if he can develop that this season. All right, now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's talk a little football, recapping Bemidji State's win in the first half. Ian, for the first 29 minutes and 58 seconds of the first half, it looked like this team was just on a track to lose and play potentially their worst game of the season. The offense could not get the ball moving. It was a tough first half for McGath. He did not have things working for him. And Bemidji State took a bad sack late in that second quarter, called the timeout, had an opportunity to run one more play, and you'd always just heave it up to the end zone and see what you can do. And as Bears fans learned a couple weeks ago, in a Hail Mary situation, you tip the ball down, not up, because when you tip it up, you have an opportunity for a guy to make a catch. And offensively, on a Hail Mary, you're always taught if you can't catch it, tip it up in the air and let somebody kind of catch it on the ricochet. And that's what happened. Bemidji State did a Hail Mary. It was insane. And of course, who came down with it? Bryce Peters, ripping the ball away from a defender, I think his own teammate in a way. He just basically blacked out and grabbed that football made an incredible play. Props to McGath for getting it to the end zone and giving his guys a chance. And it just felt like from that point on, I know there was a safety that helped Bemidji State, but just from that point on in the game, it felt like, okay, they're losing. Things weren't necessarily easy for the Beavers in the second half, but I think that was enough to kind of calm everybody down. And as good as Moorhead played, or maybe as bad as Bemidji State played in that first half, they went into the locker room and only down by 5, and they got a 3-and-out on their opening drive of the second half. Bemidji State got the football back, and they went in, scored a touchdown, took the lead, and just ran away with it. And I think that's just a testament to the defense and how well they played in the game, and the offense picking things up at the last second. But I'm kind of recapping the game all in one sentence here, so that way you can kind of go with your take scene, because that first half was a struggle, a huge struggle.
It was very, very ugly. I mean, yeah, it was shocking to see they couldn't move the ball at all, just because of the fact that Moorhead gives up the most yards per game in the entire conference. Again, for any defense. And I think it was a little bit of Moorhead's defense kind of rising to the challenge of playing in the Battle Axe rivalry game, and they're jazzed up there at home. And so they're a little bit more juiced than the Beavers might have been out the gate.
I believe it was their home finale. Maybe, I can't remember.
Probably. I mean, they only have one game left. I believe they go to Mary next week. I actually have the schedule up right here. So, yep, they play in Bismarck next weekend. So, yeah, that was their home finale. Their seniors' last home game, because they're not going to the playoffs, whether they won or lost that game. But, I tweeted out early in the game, Sam McGath threw an ugly, ugly ball, probably 4 or 5 yards over the head of one of his intended receivers. It got picked, and the Beavers couldn't make a play, and it was a pick 6 to start the game. And I say, hey, yeah, last week we came back and won, and we did it again this week. But that is not a very sustainable way to be starting games with pick 6s in the first quarter.
You don't need to be spotting teams a touchdown.
No, and I thought especially this team in MSU Moorhead, with an explosive offense like they have, you do not need to get your defense in a hole to start this game. And it was, really, really rough in the first half. It was 14-0 at one point. And it just felt like in the first half, every loss, there's been one unit that really just lets the Beavers down. We talk about Mankato. It might have been the defense that gave up all those huge touchdowns to, I can't remember, Travion Waters or something like that was his name, the receiver for Moorhead or Mankato. I'm probably getting that name wrong, but he went out and balled out. And so maybe you would have liked the defense to make a few more plays. Northern State, it was probably the offense. You only scored 13 points against, the Wolves, and that's probably a big problem and a big reason you lost that game. Against Winona, it was the special teams that didn't show up. You give up a punt return touchdown, have a couple of bad kicks, and it really costs you. Your punt coverage is bad. This game, it was almost the offense again. I thought the special teams was a huge advantage. Connor Mantelli putting them at the 1-yard line. The Beavers defense played outstanding all game. Just outstanding. Mm-hmm. That defensive line they just wreck shop the whole time. That safety was huge. But yeah, going into halftime, like you said, we had 9 points on a safety and a Hail Mary in that same drive before the Hail Mary. They went backwards. They got great field position, and they took that bad sack and went backwards. And then, yeah, that's what it is. It's a Hail Mary because it's a prayer. And that was really the turning point of the game. The second half looked so much better offensively. Defensively, the tackling was a lot better in this second half. I thought that was a big problem on the one touchdown drive the Dragons did have. Was just like, man, we weren't wrapping up. They were bouncing off tacklers. It got them a few first downs. And then eventually the touchdown, they, I think, broke a couple tackles on their way into the end zone. So, yeah, second half was just a lot better. And it's a 25-14 victory, and the Beavers retain the battle axe. That's about all you can ask for.
Right, exactly. And I think, too, in all this, the tackling at certain points, especially in the first half, was not ideal, and that's got to be corrected. And you can't be spotting teams the way that the Beavers are spotting them. But overall, Beaver defense was huge. Gangrene defense came up with the sacks. You mentioned it. They game wrecked. They get the defensive MVP. Everybody, it wasn't just one person. Everybody was dominating their assignments. That's a team in Moorhead that likes to pass a lot. Bemidji State was able to pin their ears back and go get the quarterback, especially when they got up in the second half. And Moorhead really felt the need to try and pass. They took advantage, got some interceptions at the end as well. And not only that, I know maybe it might not look it on every play, but the secondary did a really good job today on some deep passes. Props to the secondary. I know sometimes they don't always get the praise because they're not the ones who come up with sacks or the ones who come up with a huge tackle, but I thought they played a really good game. And like we mentioned on last week's episode, they've sneakily been a really key part of how this defense has been successful this season. And just props to them, man. It was a great game. You can't be spotting teams a touchdown. You can't be doing that with pick sixes on opening drives the way Bemidji State has them back-to-back weeks. The good news is it's very unlikely they do it for a third week in a row, as I knock profusely on wood to get this to finish up my point here. But overall, man, Bemidji State they had slim playoff hopes. They're still slim, and this isn't exactly a bona fide butt whooping that's going to necessarily turn heads in the playoff committee. But you know what you didn't do? You didn't bury yourselves completely. And you have an opportunity to beat Augustana and cement your playoff case. And that's really what it was going to come down to, is beating Augustana. And they have an opportunity to do that next Saturday.
Yeah, a couple other notes from this game. 6 sacks, I believe, is the total for the Beavers. Cade Barrett had 2. Marco Cavallero had 1.5. Marcus Hansen got the other half of that sack. And then Tyler Sappett and Stephen Hoffman also getting 1 sack apiece in this game. 2 interceptions for Gabe Ward in the secondary today. He played a phenomenal game. He almost housed the second one, but at the end of the day, just get down and take a knee and get out of here with the win. And that's a good thing. And like you said, CJ, this is going to be a big game next week, and we'll preview it on our usually scheduled programming for the Beavers. They play Augustana, who did win the Key to the City game, just wrapped up a few minutes ago. They beat Sioux Falls 27-21, and that will put them at 8-1 in the conference and 8-2 overall. So that game, we don't know what the rankings are going to look like. We don't know if the Beavers are going to be in them at all, maybe at the bottom in the 10 slot. But if the Beavers have any chance, they're going to need to beat this Augustana team. And it will be a very good win for your resume. So we'll touch more on that at the end of the week here after things get, revealed and what the rankings actually look like. We'll see if the Beavers do have any chance to sneak into the playoffs or not. But like you said, at least they didn't bury themselves this week. And that is the main thing that you couldn't do because there's now a chance. There's a slimmer of hope that you still could beat this Augustana team and, march into the playoffs. So we can't really start the game, I don't think, that poor on offense, because I believe it was 0 for 8 or 0 for 9 on third downs in the first half for BSU, who is a really good conversion team. So that was disappointing to see, but they kind of righted ship in the second half. That second Bryce Peters touchdown was a work of art, dude. Oh my goodness.
I don't know if he was the intended receiver or not, but what a play just to go get that thing.
Yeah, Barron was not Barron. It was Drayton Lehman was also kind of in the area.
He was kind of going up the sideline, yeah.
Yeah, it looked like it was maybe a little bit more intended to kind of go towards Peters, fading towards the end line there. But hey, either way, a great catch by Bryce in the end zone. He has been special this year. I think he had 133 yards receiving today. So that's really cool to see that he's been balling still, even throughout the season. And we'll need him to step up again with just one more week to go.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. We'll go around the NSIC in our regularly scheduled episode when all those games are final and we can kind of break things down. But thanks for joining us on this special edition. We had an opportunity to break down a few other things, and then it gives us an opportunity on our normal episode to get everything else in and not feel like we can't give a certain team or a certain game or a certain point the light of day. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on the Beaver Banter podcast.